I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if you would join me in pledging allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as is traditional, I'd like to begin by asking if anyone of the council members has a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda.
No.
No.
I do not.
Thank you. And a couple of brief notes as we start, and for the first one of those, I want to turn to Charlie.
Good morning. I want to talk about Sunset at Sunset for a couple seconds. I want to congratulate and thank the chairwoman and the entire Sunset at Sunset committee and the volunteers for the outstanding job they did at this year's festival. It's really the crown jewel of the town. So many people come together. It was a great day. A lot of comments from the vendors about how well they did. And I want to make sure that they're appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Charlie. And I have one brief note as well. As you can see, Councilmember Benton is not here today. And the way I would like to proceed with that, if there is a vote today that ends in a tie, and it's something that needs to be decided today, I will go ahead and exercise my right to break the tie. However, if it's a tie vote and something that does not need to be decided today, we'll table it and consider it at the next meeting so that the 5 council members can be the ones who are deciding about the issue. Okay, next we want to consider the draft agenda for the day and ask if anyone has any additions, subtractions they would like to make.
We'd like to add, sorry, if you don't mind, we'd like to add on there, the police would like to go ahead and talk about replacing the vehicle that got damaged in Hurricane Florence.
And let's insert that as item B under new business, the replacement of the police vehicle. And I have one other item that I would like to add is H under old business, and that is the mailing process or procedure we will use for the dredging letter that we have talked about at the last couple of meetings. I think that was one key issue that was not decided yet, to decide the whom receives that letter. Any other adjustments to the agenda?
I do not.
No. Okay.
No.
Hearing none. If anyone in our audience has comments that they would like to share, this would be a welcome time to do that.
I promise just a quick one. Ellen Dean Nelson, Shoreline Drive. Again, seconding Charlie Nern, thank you again to the Sunset at Sunset Committee. It was an outstanding event, and the town it was a very shining opportunity for us. It looked great. Wanted to personally thank you all and for everyone's hard work for approving us for a weekly market with the Sunset Beach Business Guild starting in May. We are excited. We have lots of new ideas and going to move in a positive, refreshing direction, and just want to thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Other comments? Okay. Seeing none, let's begin with old business, and item A is the appointment to the ABC Board. Council members and I interviewed 3 candidates for a position on the ABC Board: Judy Finnison, Don Kozer, and Fred Robertson. All 3 of the candidates were excellent and very well qualified for the single vacancy that occurs. We do want to express our appreciation to those 3 individuals for their willingness to serve the community. The term for this position extends until October 2021. I will now entertain a motion for appointment to the ABC Board.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, I would,
Let's see, I'm sorry, Rich, I recognize Charlie.
okay.
I make a motion that the council reappoint Mr. Don Kozer to the Sunset Beach ABC Board. I'm a firm believer that someone that's already on a board or commission and wants reappointment should be reappointed.
Okay, is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to second that motion, but I also do have an issue that I think the council needs to explore. As you mentioned, we had 3 qualified people, and we have to think of a method or a way to allow people who do apply and who are qualified the opportunity to serve. I will prepare an agenda report with some suggestions to do that. And one of the suggestions that I have, just for exploratory, that I will contain in the report, is to have term appointments. Many times we put people on boards and they do an excellent job, and they stay for many years, depriving others the opportunity. So this is a matter that I would like to explore.
Okay, thank you, and we'll look forward to that agenda report. Is there discussion about the nomination of Mr. Kozer?
Yeah, I would like to just say something. I strongly agree with Mayor Weiss's comments that we had 3 excellent candidates, and especially say thank you to Fred Robertson and Judy Finnison, who stepped forward to volunteer. I hope that they continue with their enthusiasm to look for a way to try to serve Sunset Beach. We need all the people that we can to step forward and volunteer. Don Kozer has been on for over a decade. He has done a good job. He's made major contributions to the ABC Board, and there's every reason in the world to reappoint him to this same position. So I strongly endorse him.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those who are in favor of reappointing Don Kozer to the ABC Board, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mr. Kozer will be reappointed. Item B in old business is the audio system update reconsideration, and I have just a word I want to say about that. We understand from comments from the community that sometimes it is difficult to hear us, and maybe especially so on YouTube. And sitting up here now, it's easier for me to understand how that can happen. I mean, many times I want to look to my left or look to my right when I'm speaking, and yet when I do, I'm taking my mouth away from the microphone and things don't come across clearly. So we're considering a couple of options for alternative microphones. One of those options is in the agenda packet starting on page 5. It's a headset that we know is compatible with our overall audio structure. The other option is what's referred to as an omnidimensional microphone. Would be similar to these microphones, except they are more adept at picking up comments if someone is speaking off to the right or to the left, and that might assist. We're checking to see if the availability of those and if those are compatible with our system. At this point, our understanding is both are about the same cost, so it's a matter of if we would like to change, and if we would like to change, what we want to change to. We're not prepared to proceed with that today. We will put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Question.
Yes, go
I-
ahead.
Is there a way to test amongst ourselves the omnidirectional and the earphone? I like the idea of the omnidirectional as opposed to some apparatus that we have to put on our head or our necks and keep flipping on and off, if that's possible. I'd rather be lazy and just speak and have the mic do the working.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a great idea. Cindy and Lisa and the person we work with and we can maybe proceed to see if there's a way we could sample that. We'll at least look into it and see if that's a possibility. I think probably everybody would appreciate that.
The gentleman we used does not have a storefront, so he would not have a stock of
Okay.
microphones.
My,
Does he, go ahead.
go ahead, you finish.
Does he, Lisa, could you see it? Does he have a place where these Omni mics are used so we could, you know, tap into a YouTube or go to a meeting and listen just to see how effective they are?
We'll check with him.
Okay, thank you.
And I sort of wanted to see what these look like, and this looks complicated to me.
Yeah, I like the idea of our being able to have a little hands-on experimentation with them. So we will proceed in checking on that and getting back to everyone. Okay, Jan, go ahead.
Is there not a sound system that has a similar setup as this, but does pick up when we turn our heads?
I think that's what the omnidimensional one is designed to do, and there's not information about that in the packet.
Okay, okay,
But hopefully there will be next time.
okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, old business item C, facility land purchase, in your packet, page 7, and Councilmember Nern is going to initiate that.
Thank you. The Public Works Department has outgrown its current location. It is also an eyesore at the entrance to our island. Hiram and I have identified 3 possible sites for a new Public Works facility. And we're not going to discuss those sites in open session. The site should be 3 to 5 acres to meet our current and possible future expansion. Safe storage of our public work and stormwater equipment and materials. The site should not be in public view and/or heavily screened and accessible to a main roadway. We'll need a minimum of 2 buildings. The buildings would be of steel construction, which are the least expensive and most easily constructed. We'll need a water and sewer hookup. We'll need a stormwater plan. Water retention pond, I think, would be the least expensive and easiest to construct. The land purchase, site preparation, including water, sewer, and retention pond and buildings, would be $1.5 million. That's my best guess. Depending on land prices, we may be able to do this for $1.2 million. I move that the council direct the staff to look into the feasibility of purchasing land and construction costs for a new public works facility.
Okay, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
And discussion?
We did not plan for this at the budget time. Why? Why wasn't this brought up at budget time?
I can answer that. Originally, it was brought up at the very beginning of budget when we started back in January, but due to personnel shifts and the status of the council at the time, we felt it was easier to streamline the budget without these heavier plans and put that off till the next budget season. My conversations with Charlie at this point have been all in preparation for having a plan to present in the spring for budget to discuss.
So this is to be discussed at budget time?
Well, this can be discussed anytime between now and then, but the goal is to have something ready when we go to budget so that we don't have to sit there at every budget meeting hashing out this kind of thing. This isn't we're not asking them to spend $100 million right now to do this. This isn't like we're going out tomorrow and figuring this and spending the money. This is permission to go ahead and start the process of figuring out if there's land available, where there's land available, what kind of negotiations we need to get into for that land, what kind of plan we need to have in place, what exactly facilities do we need to develop the plan to bring to y'all.
And I would like to know the importance of the need as well.
Simply put, at this point, Public Works is outgrowing its current site. I mean, that's why, in Charlie's words, eyesore, but that's the nature of things. The buildings are older. They need more facilities with the expansion of our stormwater program. We need a larger laydown yard for materials. We need a place to store the vehicles. That can't be managed at the current facility. Then you also got to take into account there's future possibilities. They need actual larger land. Debris pickup would be easier if we had a place to store it. We don't have any place in town. So now we're having to truck it directly to the landfill. I mean, there's a multitude of options that a larger facility or a larger land area would avail the town for multitude of reasons that we can't come up with all the time. But also, looking down the road 20, 30 years in the future, we don't know what this town's going to look like, and we need the room to expand for our own facilities. Presently, if you look at Town Hall, we have no room to move Town Hall either. There's little parking. The fire department doesn't have a lot of space. Fire Station 2 doesn't have a lot of space. Public Works is taking up some of that space. There's been talk about having the town's own gas tanks. There's nowhere to put that. So there's a need for the town. If the town geographically won't grow the way state laws are currently, so within the town we need to find places that we can facilitate our own individual growth.
Mr. Mayor, to me, this requires a deep study. To me, as we continue to outsource public works tasks, as we recently did with the Leaf and Limb program, although it's anticipated that we'll have a $500,000 surplus this year, we're going to need that money for the additional cost for the sidewalks. Also, we're going to need to put money set aside, which has yet to be determined, for the dredging program, since we are going to be financing it with the property owners. And lastly, and it's on the agenda today, the citizens of this town have been desiring dedicated beach parking. How are we going to do all these things? Someone needs to explain that to the taxpayers, because no one has yet to explain it to me.
If I may, real quick, it's not our goal to sit there and ask for this money for next year and have this facility next year. This would be a multi-year process and would be funded as such. It even could be financed. So it's not like we're asking for a new public works facility next year. It'd be ideal, but there's, budget time and secure the land, budget for the land. Then there's design, engineering, construction. This is a 2 to 3 year process in my eyes, and can be drawn out that way. But essentially, you need to have the plan before you can come up, with how you're going to budget for it. And the way I'm looking at it, you budgeting first and then coming up with a plan, it's backwards. So, I know what you're saying. Where's all this money coming from? But in my eyes, we're not asking for $1 million next year. We're asking for the start to a program that over its lifetime should cost 1.5.
I'd like to see a need justification. If we're outsourcing all of these activities, then I would like to see a need justification. If we're worried about the storage of the public works equipment, I don't know if this could be done, but how many fire trucks do we have at the second fire station? One?
Two. We've secured for now to put the pump truck at Fire Station 2, but that's not a permanent fix. Presently, we will be placing the new vac truck for stormwater at Fire Station 2, since there's nowhere to store it at Public Works.
Yeah, okay.
But that's not a long-term solution.
Well, I understand that.
We're looking for a long-term solution.
Well, you still, I think, have to justify the need.
There's space that can be rearranged, things that can be probably tossed out. I'm sure if we became creative and studied it, that we could find the ample space. I don't know, but I think it needs to be studied.
For example, real quick, the vac truck will not fit into the bays at the current Public Works facility. The bays aren't tall enough.
Well, I think a need would certainly be part of the materials that you would bring back to council at an appropriate time. So I think we're together on that. John?
A couple of comments that come up then. You know, what is being asked for and proposed at this point in time is to start an investigation and a planning process to identify the places, to look at the cost, to see what factors need to go in, so that in the next planning cycle, budget cycle, we can start to consider where we put this stuff in. Some of the remarks that are there, you know, after long consideration, we outsourced the leaf and limb because of the small size of our DPW and the ability to use those resources to do other maintenance work around town that's not being done. We have already budgeted for the money for the sidewalk, am I correct? And so we don't need an additional budget to do the sidewalk. That money's already been taken care of, accounted for, and it's...
In a budget amendment that y'all have approved when it comes time for it, yes.
Yeah, but once the
You've already
contract is
voted on
in.
it, yeah.
But it was part of our last budget that we put it in there.
Most of it was, remember, when we approved the contract in August, we had to approve.
We had to raise more money.
Yeah.
But it's there. It's not a major issue. Dredging program, we have money set aside for the dredging program, already budgeted, already taken care of. It's not a new issue that needs to come in there.
Come on.
Well, I'm making counterpoints to your points.
Yeah, I know
which
that.
is
You
which
were
is my
counter-
which
you-
is my right to do.
You were a counterintelligence officer in the Army.
Mr.
Rich,
Mayor, I'm
yeah.
not
And
finished,
yeah,
and he's out
I'm
of order.
just trying to say.
You are out of order.
John's still speaking. Let's have John.
So it's time to go into a plan. The big concern I have is now that we identify that we do have a plan, what does that do to local empty land price values? If we indicate that we are looking for it. I know we have to do that. I know it becomes very much a public issue. It's already a public issue now that we have it up there. But I have that concern that prices will be inflated artificially. But I strongly agree, we need to address this issue. We need to have the staff work on it, look at the land options, look at the space options, the access options, so that we can come into a long-term plan to resolve this problem. Thank you.
Jim.
I also want to see a need analysis. What we're doing here, excuse me, is setting up a process just like the dredging program. We're saying right here, we're going to do this in so many words. We are. I personally think we may see a drop in our revenues come the first of the year. So we have to worry about that as well. And I do think there will be a considerable cost to the town up front on this dredging project because the town pays for it. And we don't have that part of it in our budget. We have only the cost of Moffett and Nichols in our budget, not the paying for the actual dredging.
It's budgeted as a capital budget, capital project. The money's been set aside. It's 1.4 in the budget right now.
Well, that's for the dredging program.
Right, but I was just
We're
letting
talking
council.
about the payment. We're gonna have to.
That's us paying for it, to do it before we get the payback on the assessment. That's the money spent.
I
to
understand
perform
that, but the
work.
payment's not coming back directly. People are gonna have several years to pay it back. So that money, we need reserve funding set aside for that revolving payment.
Okay,
And secondly, we allocated money for the sidewalks. I think it was, correct me, $300,000 or $400,000. We got a $100,000 grant. The sidewalk estimate now was almost $1.1 million, plus or minus. Okay, so that has to be accounted for. Although we're having a surplus this year, maybe around 500,000, so that could almost compensate for the sidewalks. But this is, we need a need assessment and we need a financial assessment, big picture financial assessment to see where we are after all of these issues. And plus, we have another concern that I mentioned. The people want citizen beach parking.
Which is another item on here. But
That's what I mentioned.
So my notes here say we need a need study, site plan, land justification, and finance, and possibly over multi-year, that kind of thing. So, but we're looking for consensus to move forward so that we are prepared at budget time. The discussion seems to be don't bother, is what I'm trying to get. So are we moving forward or?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Uh,
please.
I asked for a feasibility study. I didn't ask anybody to put up money to pay for this right now. It is not something that's going to happen this year or next year. I would hope that the year after that we have some steps going forward to make this a reality. But Mr. Serrato mentioned beach parking. He's asking for a feasibility study. Maybe he should use those arguments with his own.
I think what we are asking for is just a feasibility study now.
Exactly.
And I would say a feasibility study would typically include a needs analysis and a financial analysis. But that's as far as what we're asking for right now.
Yes, sir.
To enable us to look at as much information as we can, and then to make a decision about whether or not to proceed. Anybody see that differently?
I agree.
Okay, other comments? All right, hearing none. All those who are in favor of proceeding with this study about the facility land purchase, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Hey.
All right. So we've got 2-2. And the question then becomes, is this a matter that needs to be decided today or a matter that could wait until the next meeting? Charlie or Hiram, anyone want to give
What?
your thoughts about whether or not this is a matter that should be decided today or not?
Well, I mean, this is going to end up being like so many other things that we've kicked down the road. I'm asking for a feasibility study. And if it's decided today, we don't have to deal with it later on. And it's again, if I wanted us to say, okay, we're going to spend $1 million on that today, I would want Mark here. But I don't think he's needed in this issue.
Okay, other thoughts about that?
Yes, you know, you defined it as a needs study, or rather a feasibility study that included needs, that included options, that included finances, both of which were the objections that Councilwoman Harris and Councilman Serrato raised, you know, and that would be addressed in these things. I think, you know, it's time to let staff start doing homework and preparatory work.
Okay. And Richard Jan, would you like to add a comment at this point?
Mr. Mayor, to me, this is not a top priority. We have other issues to deal with first. And I would suggest if you, I would have no objection to give Councilman Benton the opportunity to study and have his input on this.
Well, my understanding is that we are in no way making a commitment to a facility land purchase, but rather we are making a commitment to study to see if that is the right thing to do. And on the basis that it is just a study and not a commitment to spending money or any specific proposal, it seems to me that well, my own feeling would be that it's appropriate always to do advanced studies, and it would be appropriate to proceed in that direction. So I will vote today, and I will vote aye in proceeding with the study. Under old business, item D is discussion of a Christmas employee bonus, and that is also being initiated by Councilman Nern. That's pages 8 to 11 in your packet.
In December 2017, council revisited a year-end bonus for all full-time employees. And in February 2018, we awarded a one-time $300 bonus to each full-time employee. The information, the cost of a bonus has been given to me three ways. One is 1%. That would cost $24,520, and that figure includes the town portion of the Social Security, Medicare, all that. A $500 bonus, which is what I'm recommending, would cost the town $25,300. That also includes the Social Security, FICA, all that extra. And at $300, it would cost the town $15,179. Now, I did just get these figures this morning. If we gave a $500 bonus, and this is just an average because everybody's a little bit different, the average take home for $500 would be $461.75. For $300, the take home would be $271.05. I move that we consider a $500 year-end bonus for each full-time town employee.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
discussion?
Yes,
Jan?
yes. I want every employee to know that I truly appreciate everything they do. I think they all do wonderful jobs, and the jobs they do are most appreciated. However, once again, why was this not discussed at budget? This is something that should have been discussed at budget. And the decision was made by a previous council, and I know this council is not bound by a previous council. However, they made the decision to eliminate Christmas bonuses when they instituted a merit plan where you earned what you got. I find it ironic that we're willing to spend $25,000 for this particular issue, and we had another issue that was way, way, way more, in my opinion, important, and that is to hire a search firm to help us hire the most important job in this town, the town administrator. I'm wondering where our priorities are.
Thank you. And other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. We established a merit pay system. And I did an analysis, and let me Lisa, I only have one copy, but maybe after the meeting I'll give council a copy. This is a 2018 salary review analysis. The salary review, we had 31 eligible people for review. 14 of them received the max. As you well know, the cap was, which I did not support, there was a 3% cap. You could not receive more than 3%. I thought that was unfortunate. I think good employees should be paid, good quality employees, there should be, to me, a wider separation. The number of employees receiving between 2.5 and 2.9% were 13. There were 2 employees that received increases between 2% and 2.4%. And there were 2 employees that received less than 2%. Now, I would prefer, now it's obvious that all of the funds were not used during the review, because I didn't do the calculation. I'll let our finance director do that. But it's obvious that not all the funds were used during the review. So there's a balance of some pool of money. What I would like to do is to use that pool of money that we did not use this year and added to the reserve, to the salary increase pool next year. So for example, if Hiram comes in with the proposal of 3.5% increase, because inflation is beginning to tweak up a little. If Hiram comes in at a recommendation of 3.5%, it'll be the 3.5% plus the additional funds that were not utilized in this review. I think, personally, I think providing bonus programs, I'm not here I'm not here to be loved by our employees. I'm not here to patronize our employees. I do not like bonus programs. Never had one, never received a bonus as an HR director. The only bonus program we had was we awarded people a bonus of several $1,000s if they made a substantial contribution, saved the institute thousands of dollars. It's something that had to be extraordinary. And I do not like bonuses. I don't want the employees to perceive that I don't believe in publicly patronize employees. I just have an issue with that. So, Mr. Mayor, I would like to file a motion to use the non-allocated funds during the 2018 review.
There's already a motion on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor regarding the bonus.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
So-
I will hold my motion.
We'll come back to that.
Mr. Mayor, may I also add some?
Yes, unless John and Charlie have not spoken on this issue
Okay.
yet. We'll give them a chance if they wish.
Well, you know, the $300 bonus that we gave last January was not in the budget. This was also in the budget, and we put it off, the bonus for this year. You know, you talk about how good our employees are. Look at their performance during the hurricane. The preparation was excellent. The services provided during the storm were excellent. The cleanup and wind down after the storm was excellent. When I was working at the town booth at Sunset, so many people came up and gave thank yous about what a great job the town had done. I didn't just hear that at the administrative booth, for lack of a better term, but I also heard it when I was around the fire department and the police department. This is a way of saying thank you, and it's not patronizing our employees. You say you want to hire and keep good employees. Well, this is part of the way you do that. And a lot of our employees only make $12 or $14 an hour. I think we should do the right thing and take care of our employees. Yes.
I think Charlie covered it very well. Like he said, we gave a $300 bonus last year that was not in the budget. And this bonus this year was cut out during the budget discussions. And we should, in my mind, publicly recognize the staff, the work and the performance that they do. And it's not just the work and the performance that they do during the storm, but it's the work and performance they do all year round. I think the council should publicly recognize the staff. And as Charlie said, I don't consider this to be patronizing the staff. I think the council should take every opportunity there is when we have a chance to give due recognition to the hard work and services that the staff provides to this town. I strongly support the $500 bonus.
Thank you. Jan?
I just would like to point out that the benefits that our employees have are better than any of the highest established firms in the Research Triangle. The employee benefits that we have are unheard of in private industry. I mean, our employees get excellent benefits, and that means a lot. Benefits mean a lot. And we're giving them excellent benefits already. I doubt if you can find any employer that gives better benefits than we do.
Mr. Mayor, those are good points. I was on the previous council and I worked with Councilwoman Carol Scott to implement a pay merit-based system. It was supported by the staff. We did not provide bonuses. We thought this issue was finally resolved. And now it rears its head. Yes, our employees did a good job during the storm. I come from a different culture. They're expected to do a good job. That's their job, to do a good job. If they don't do a good job, then they shouldn't get any money. If they do a good job, then they should get the maximum increase that we can possibly allow them. That's what merit-based system is. To collectively say we all do a great job is subjective and it's not true. We are here to maintain the highest quality employee that we have. And you do that and you reward them by a merit-based system. And like I said, this year it was capped. It wasn't capped before. It was capped this year. So if I am an outstanding employee, I couldn't get more than 3%. And I think that just violates the whole purpose of a merit pay system. So I can't say anything more than that. Just giving people, I don't know what the bonus was last year. I didn't like it. I went along with it thinking that, well, maybe this will just finish it, and it doesn't. I think the bonus last year, Lisa, was it $200 or $300? I forget.
It was 300.
Was it 300?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the packet.
Yeah. And we had the employees receiving less than, some of them, less than 2.5%. I think, I don't know, like I said, I worked with Carol, we did away with it, it rears its head, because to me, everybody wants to be loved. And that's what it comes down to. Everybody wants to be loved by the employees. I don't want to be loved. I just want to reward those employees who are doing an excellent job with an excellent raise. I've said enough.
Any other comments? Charlie?
Just a couple. Good benefits do not equal having some money at Christmas to buy a Christmas tree or to buy your wife or your children Christmas gifts. Remember, most of our employees are on strict budgets because of the low pay. You can't spend your benefits. And as I recall, when we put the cap on the merit increase, that's what Mr. Serrato asked for.
Was not.
And are you done? If that was the case, then why didn't he ask for a merit increase of 5% or 7%? That's all.
2 quick points, maybe more, or is it me or Charlie?
No, go on.
Go ahead, and then we'll
John.
You know,
next.
first off, concerning the benefits, our benefits being better than Federal Triangle, or Triangle?
Research Triangle.
Research Triangle, excuse me. We just got proposals in here to do a staff and benefit analysis, which will give us an idea of what we need to do to determine where our benefits rack and stack against other communities around here. Second point I would make is that I would dare say that the Research Triangle average salaries are significantly higher than the Brunswick County or Western Brunswick County salaries are that we have here. So it's really apples and oranges, you know. And I distinguish between our discussion on merit pay, which I strongly supported, from the different discussion that we're having today as to whether or not we're going to give a holiday bonus to our staff. And I strongly support giving a bonus to our staff. And if they love me, that's fine. If they don't love me, that's fine. But that has nothing to do whether I think we should be giving a bonus to our staff.
Rich?
Mr. Mayor, I recall a quote in the Beacon when when the staff recommended a 3% increase. It said, Councilman Nern said their increase was miserly.
And it was.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying that's what the Beacon reported. Mr. Nern says it was miserly. Mr. Nern should be a shop steward or a business agent. However, last year the CPI went up 2.7, 2.8%. The staff recommended 3%. And they recommended a cap. I did not approve it. They recommended a cap. So when Mr. Nern says that I supported the cap, he's incorrect. And public records will bear that out. I can't add any more to this. Flooding people with money, everyone would like to do. That's not how the real world works. And I've said enough. I'm done.
All right,
Mr. Mayor?
Jan?
I would like to see the results of a benefit study before we do Christmas bonuses. Because I think you're going to be really surprised when you see that study done.
Let me ask one question of Jan. I know you had done some work on wage and salary and benefits. Do you anticipate that we would receive results of that study this year in time to make a decision?
That would be probably determined by staff's time. I don't think we need to do this kind of study to find out about our basic benefits and whether or not Christmas bonuses should or should not be given.
Okay. And Charlie?
Well, salary and benefit study, Jan took on the job of doing that last year, stating that we didn't need a professional company to do it, and it was never followed through on. And in that case, I don't think I will be surprised.
All right. Well, let me summarize, make a couple summary points. And the first point, and the most important point, I think council has provided us with a really good discussion of multiple ways of showing, excuse me, multiple ways of showing appreciation to our town staff and the pluses and minuses associated with each. One point that has come out in from all of the council members is appreciation for our staff. And in the little more than a month that I have been working here, I have grown to appreciate our staff more and more. I think we have a really terrific staff, and the most important thing is that they know that all of council believes that. With regard to the way that we proceed, let's, if no one has any other discussion, proceed with voting on the motion. And I would ask all of those who support the motion to please say aye.
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 And opposed?
Nay.
Okay. I thought that might be a 2-2 vote. Well, on this matter, I'm going to take the opposite approach. I wasn't a member of the budget discussions earlier this year, and therefore I feel somewhat at a loss in dealing with that matter. And given the possibility that we might get some feedback or have some additional information available to us, even if not the complete wage and benefit study, I will not exercise my right to vote on this, but rather ask for it to be tabled and for Mr. Benton, who was part of those budget discussions, to have a chance to consider the arguments that have been made and have what will turn out to be the decisive vote. Would someone make a motion to table this matter?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
So now how do I proceed on the second 2-2 vote? Thanks, everyone.
You move it forward.
Yeah, we'll put this on the agenda for our first meeting in November, and I presume Mr. Benton will be watching the YouTube version at some point of this meeting and hear the arguments, but we'll be sure to inform him as well, and then let him weigh in on the matter. Thank you for that discussion. I thought that was a good discussion on both sides of the question. Next on our agenda, is that your copy?
You can use it. No cheating.
Item number 4E, Communication Policy Amendment. This is found on your packet, pages 12 to 20, and Councilmember Corbett will initiate this.
Okay, just as background, Councilman Nerd raised this with a recommendation on the policy that was to ban any member of the governing body from communicating with state and county officials and the news media supposedly speaking for or on behalf of the town council of the town of Sunset Beach. I was sort of volunteered / assigned to make an effort to recraft that in a slightly more acceptable form. The big issue is that when a council member is speaking as an individual, as being able to determine when a council member is speaking as an individual with their own individual views, or when the council is speaking on behalf of the town of Sunset Beach. And the concern is that when the council member is communicating with state or county officials or the press on town business, the interpretation is usually that the member is speaking as an official designated representative. So it appears that the member is speaking as an official representative when actually the member has not yet been authorized to do so. And we're talking about the communication policy there. A second aspect of this is how do you enforce it, which is a question, as demonstrated by the changes that we made on March 5th to our communication policy, that each one of our emails should have on the bottom a disclaimer saying that this is a public record document. And this policy is just frequently not followed, so enforcement becomes a question. My recommendation is to move to approve a communication policy that no member of Sunset Beach Town Council shall communicate with state and county officials or the press on town business without prior approval of the council. If circumstances are such that communications are unavoidable, the council member must clearly state that the member is communicating as an individual, not as a council member, and without approval of the town council. So that's my recommended change, is essentially to add in that point of clearly communicating that you're speaking as an individual, not as a member of the council, if one does not have permission to do so.
And that is a motion that you are making?
Yes.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second. Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion.
Yes. Ms. Harris?
Excuse me.
I often speak, and I am an elected official of this town. I am speaking for myself, but I cannot eliminate that I am an official elected by the people of this town. If we have voted and passed something, why can't I speak on it? If the town council has passed it, I'm not allowed to say this is what the town's policy is? I got to come to you first and ask for approval? I always let people know that this is Jan Harris's opinion or Jan Harris's facts as she has found them. But it still remains a fact that I am an elected official of this town.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I wrote down some statements which I'm going to read. And it's years of experience that I read this. First of all, never ever implement a policy that you cannot enforce, especially one that violates our basic right to free speech. The chief spokesperson for this town is Mayor Weiss. He, like any member of the council, the staff, our taxpayers, and the Beacon, are still entitled to their personal opinions. Restricting our right to communicate with state and county officials and the news media can only be classified as a gross abuse of power. After reading Mr. Nern's agenda report, which you have in your packet, it is obvious that Councilman Nern and Corbett's agenda reports are directed towards me. And sadly, they also included Representative Frank Eiler. I would also like to know why Mr. Nern excluded Mr. Benton in his report, who was also involved in the conversation we had with Mr. Eiler at a public meeting. The issue was using restricted beach nourishment funds to allow the council the option to offset the cost of stormwater program, which required legislative action. This was brought forward to the council and approved by the council. However, both Nern and Corbett did not approve this motion and stated their opinions. Intimidation comes in many flavors, Mr. Mayor, as you witnessed during the mayoral process and when Mr. Nern publicly defamed our police. Thankfully,
That's a lie.
Thankfully, his defaming and libelous remarks were not reported in the Beacon. Mr. Mayor, when is this going to end?
Thank you for your comments, but let's keep this on the basis of issues. Mr. Nern?
Okay. What? Mr. Serrato went to Representative Eiler and asked if we could use the beach nourishment funds to fund our stormwater policy. We're allowed to save 2% out of the accommodations tax for beach nourishment. Mr. Serrato had no right to go to Eiler on his own without bringing it to council. And not just myself and John, but to Jan and Mark. This goes back, this is Mr. Serrato's MO. Go back to when he was mayor and he illegally ordered town employees to patch potholes in front of one of his friend's house. The council finally voted to take away all the town stationery that he had. And here he is again, he has an idea and he goes to Representative Eiler and asks this. And I don't think that's correct. And when Mr. Serrato, if you're discussing town business, whether you're giving your personal opinion or not, you are representing the town. And that's the impression that people get.
I know there.
That's a fact of being an elected official.
There have been other instances in the past where this question has come up before council. I can think of at least a couple of cases with other members. So let's not discuss what specific members have done, but let's stick to the merits of the policy. John, in having made this motion, could you elaborate on situations that you think would be appropriate or would not be appropriate for anybody, the mayor or the council members, to speak to, well, let's separate them. First of all, to federal and state officials. Would there be any circumstances where you think that would be permissible, or do you think that it is simply impermissible?
My proposal was actually very simple. The idea that if it is not something that the council has directed a member to speak to these officials about, then the member should include a disclaimer that they are speaking from their own perspective, be it elected official or not. You've heard me say before, we are all elected, therefore everything we do is political by definition, okay? I'm not saying you can't speak with them, just make sure that if you are requesting an official to do something, or if you're putting a perspective in the newspaper, you make it clear whether it's a perspective that you are speaking on behalf as authorized by the entire council, or whether you're speaking, this is my view of how it should be done. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. So, as you know,
And without trying to go into all the hypothetical situations that's there.
so,
Mr. Mayor.
And it's not affecting one's ability, one's freedom of speech. You know, it's just making clear what is the position that you are speaking from, and whether you've been directly authorized to make that approach.
Okay. Jan?
I guess I'm a little confused. If a newspaper asks me a question, I'm allowed to answer that question. And I can say, this is my view, which I always do, make it clear that it's me. Unless the council has ruled, and if the council has ruled that this is the town's position, I don't see why I should have to come back to you folks and ask for permission to answer that question, if there is a question in there.
All right, let's stop at that point, and John, you respond to...
Just a little bit of common sense that goes into here. One, what I'm asking for, what I'm stating in this, in response to the council's direction to try to improve the policy statement there, is what you just said, when you're speaking in your own view, to say so. If the council has already voted on something and becomes a matter of record, then it's sort of a moot point that we have done it. If the council has voted on something, it's a matter of record, and you go forward and say, well, we voted 3-2 to do this, and I strongly object to it, then you're not using a council position, you're using your own perspective that goes into it. But if you're explaining what the council did and what the recommendation is, that's already a matter of public record and done. So I think you're just pushing the envelope just a little bit.
Well, maybe, but it's not clear by the way this is worded. It states,
it's not
if
a
we
void.
speak,
Yeah.
we have to come get permission from the whole council first. That's the way this reads.
And the way I would interpret, in the matter of common sense, if the council has approved it, then you don't have to go back to the council and say, may I tell the world that we have approved this? Give the details. So the idea is to clearly distinguish what is authorized, and I would say if we have voted on something and authorized it, then we can speak about it. But if you have a dissenting view or a disclaimer, or you're talking about something that we haven't addressed and voted, then just say it's my own opinion, that's all.
I always do that.
And Jan, based on what John has just said, does that seem acceptable to you?
It seems acceptable, but to go through all of this seems a waste of all of our time.
Would you agree that if someone goes to a federal or state official or agency about town business, that council should know about that in advance and even approve of that?
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Okay.
And the case that Mr. Nern is making about Mr. Serrato, the town did come back and pass a resolution for Mr. Serrato to approach Mr. Eiler.
That was
After the fact.
It was Say that again? I didn't hear you.
After the fact.
Listen,
So, let's just stick on this one line here, because I think
Sure.
we're finding some areas of agreement. So, as I hear what Mr. Corbett and Mr. Nern say, is that if we're going to a federal or state official, that's something that council should know about in advance and
It-
essentially approve.
If it's town
If it's
business,
town business.
I have a right to speak with my representative.
And you would even still have that right if you make it clear you are speaking as an individual. Now, did I say anything there that doesn't sound right?
That sounded accurate to me.
Okay.
I think we're all missing the point.
Can't hear you.
I think we're all missing the point. And one thing I would like to say, when the heck is common sense ever going to make a comeback in Sunset Beach? What the heck are we doing? I went to a public meeting. Frank Eiler was there. Mark Benton was with me. And we had a general discussion about county issues and other matters. And I brought up the issue that we're entering into a stormwater management program. Mr. Benton was with me. And I said to Mr. Eiler that it was going to be very costly. And I just posed a suggestion. I said, Frank, we have beach nourishment funds in our account that we hardly ever use, and it's building by $300,000, $400,000 a year. What would the town need to do in order to tap that resource to support the stormwater program?
All right, Rich, can I get you to stop for just 1 second?
Please.
And does that sound okay so far? Up to the point of conversation and asking a question?
At this meeting, was Mr. Serrato there?
Let me finish,
representing-
please.
Now,
Let me
Mayor
finish,
asked me a
please. I
question.
listened to you and your accusations.
Let Charlie respond to my question, and then we'll let you, I didn't mean to interrupt you in the middle, it's just I thought that was a
You did.
point. I did.
Mayor,
I acknowledge, but I thought that was. a point
Mayor,
that-
you need to use your microphone, please.
Thank you. But I thought that was a point that we could figure out. And Mr. Nern started to respond to my question, so please continue.
Well, what was the meeting? What was Mr. Serrato's point at the meeting? Was he there on behalf of the town of Sunset Beach? Sounds to me like he was.
Okay. Rich, well, continue.
If I can continue,
Please,
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Let me see, I lost my train of thought. It's your fault. And he said, yes, he said we could do an amendment to he could file legislation. Mr. Benton and I brought that back to the council and conveyed our discussion with Mr. Eiler. And every time I've corresponded to Mr. Eiler on an email, I copied Ms. Anglin to have that email sent to the full council like I always do. Everything was open. We had council discussions maybe for several meetings or a couple of meetings, and we explored it, and the council approved the motion, other than Mr. Nern and Mr. Corbett. And if you read Mr. Nern's letter, just read it. I will talk to anybody I want, whether it's a county official, a taxpayer, my priest. I'll talk to anyone I want, and I will offer my opinion. And if I see a county official, and if there's an issue that could benefit the town of Sunset Beach, I will raise that issue with him and bring it back to the council. I am not going to be handcuffed by Mr. Nern and Mr. Corbett. It's a violation of my right, and this conversation should just end, because this motion is illegal.
Rich, in the conversation that you had with Mr. Eiler, was there any point in which you said you were representing the town in asking this question?
When I was representing the,
That you were representing the town or the will of town council?
I'm a councilman. He's a representative. I raised the question. He gave me an answer.
Okay.
He said it could be possible. It could benefit the town. I bring it back to the council. We've had discussions. I mean, I'm losing my mind.
Don't do that, but let me give Mr. Corbett and Mr. Nern a chance. Can you put your finger specifically on what was involved in that situation that makes you uncomfortable?
It was the fact that, number one, Mr. Benton was never part of the conversation when it was first brought up. He may have been there, and he may have been listening, or he may not have been. But what bothers me is that a town councilman can go and ask a representative if we can use stormwater funds, if we can use beach nourishment funds for the stormwater program without discussing it with the rest of the council. Mr. Serrato came back like it was a done deal. And whether he said he was a councilman or not, he was there, he was representing the town, he was speaking as a councilman for the town.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Serrato has, this is from Mr. Nern's agenda opinion. And it says on top, agenda item submitted by Councilman Nern and is subject to his opinion. Councilman Serrato has communicated with Representative Eiler requesting that legislation be passed. That's not true. As a good old boy favor. Mr. Mayor, this is insulting. It's just plain insulting. I can't pass legislation. I can only determine if this legislation could be possible to help the taxpayers of Sunset Beach. I don't pass legislation. I don't create legislation.
Mr. Mayor,
Jan?
does this mean that should we be in a position, no matter what, whether we may be in Raleigh or whatever, and the opportunity arises for us to ask a question for something that could help our town, we can't do it unless we get permission first?
That's what they're saying.
No, it's not what it's saying. It's saying if you're in that circumstance, make it clear that you have not been designated by the town council to make that position. You are asking, as a council member, that's fine, but on your own, without the whole council to having approved it. That's all it is.
Has anyone ever done that?
I don't know.
John,
I was asked to come up with a modification to the statement that Councilman Nern made,
By who?
proposed
By who?
at the council,
Who?
that meeting, at the end of that meeting,
What meeting?
the June 4th council meeting.
Well,
where-
you brought it up. You're the one who
No, I
brought-
didn't bring it
I
up.
didn't bring it up.
All right, well,
Be that as it may. I think we've had enough campaign speeches for one topic, and we ought
Oh,
to go ahead
yes,
and
yeah,
shut it
backpedal.
down.
Yeah, stop backpedaling.
Mr.
all
Mayor,
right, let's
Mr. Mayor.
just take a second here. Charlie, you want to get us moving in the
What-
right direction?
The point I was trying to make is that to use beach nourishment funds for the stormwater program or anything other than beach nourishment is ridiculous. Look what we could have been if that storm, if Florence came in 40 miles south. I don't know that we'd have a beach. And the idea that he makes up on his own, with his own mind, that he's going to try and get permission or through whatever means to use that beach nourishment fund for stormwater. We have money budgeted for stormwater.
Mr. Mayor, we discussed all this when we had the vote months ago.
All right, I think we've probably all had a chance to say what we want to say. And even though it doesn't sound like it, I think there are points of agreement, and it may be that we just haven't captured it sufficiently well in the recommended motion. I thought I understood the motion, but some have interpreted it differently, and therefore maybe we can tighten it up. I don't think I don't think anyone wants to silence any of council's ability to speak with federal or state agencies, or certainly the media. I read the intent as being that if it's specifically about town business, that the council member might say something as simple as, I've not been authorized by council to say this, but as a council member, I'm very interested in this, and your answer is something I could take to council, or something like that. But what would be prohibited would be saying, without prior approval, Sunset Beach Town Council is interested in doing such and such, if the council has never authorized that. Does that make sense?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're trying to reduce common sense to print. But I will say very clearly, I don't care what motion and how anyone words it, I am not going to change what I've been doing, period. I will express my opinions. I will talk to county officials to gather information. I will talk to Frank Eiler. I will talk to Senator Rabin. I will talk to any public official or any county official. And I don't really care what Mr. Nern and Corbett pass. I am not following that motion because it is a restriction of my right to free speech and to explore. Thank you.
And Rich, what I would respond to that by saying that all of the things that you've just indicated you want to have freedom to do, I think the motion allows you to do. The one thing that would be restricted would be giving the impression or stating that you are representing town council in what you are saying or what you are doing. And I know there was a previous example, not involving any of the members of the current council, where a council member went to a meeting and seemed to be representing the town, although in his opinion he had not indicated that he was. But it raised the same issue that is being raised now. So I don't see this as being a motion solely directed at you. It is something
No.
that has come up.
No, yeah, well, that happened at a previous council.
That's right.
When a council member was put on a board, didn't let the council know, used his Sunset Beach address and his Sunset Beach title, councilman, and that created the appearance that he was representing the town of Sunset Beach when he was not. This was in regard to the terminal ground that Ocean Isle was attempting to achieve. That was misrepresentation. This is completely, to me, this is completely different. Completely different.
And
Completely different.
And I would say that it's similar in that both are trying to avoid cases of misrepresentation.
Well, in this case, he wasn't avoiding it. He was acting as a councilman. When I go to a meeting, or if I go to an event, scheduled or unscheduled, I talk to people. I don't go, I'm not speaking for the, sometimes I do when it's an issue. I say, I'm not speaking for the council, I'm speaking, this is my personal opinion. It's common sense. It's common sense. And with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, I don't mean to be blunt, but I don't care what motion you pass. I'm not following it.
Well,
Because it's just so
May I speak?
basic.
go ahead, John.
2 points. The council member who was involved in that came back, and when that issue was brought up, he had a different version of that presentation of what was happening. So, and that's all I'm doing is pointing out that he had a different version of what happened.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's right or whether it's wrong. The council asked me to do something, I did it. I find it's very revealing that Mr. Serrato just clearly points out if he disagrees with something, he's going to go against it, and no matter what we do in our policies or our rules.
Policy and
That's
rules,
it,
they're
sir.
unconstitutional.
Yeah, I just find that objectionable behavior for a council member.
You are not controlling my free speech.
All right, well, let's try to proceed this way. Certainly, councils have protocols, and members are expected to follow those protocols. So I don't see that there's anything unusual about that. It would be unusual if the protocol is stated in such a way that it could be interpreted, as Jan said in her original comment, or Mr. Serrato, Rich said in his recent comments, that it would be a denial of free speech. So I would say perhaps the next step would be sitting down with the town attorney and perhaps redrafting or revising this statement in a way that makes it clear that we are not denying free speech, but that we don't want to have situations where it's unclear to others when a council member is representing himself or herself versus an authorized position, a position that's been authorized by council. So we have a motion on the floor, and the motion has been seconded.
Are we going to discuss your recommendation?
Well, I think we need to go ahead, unless you feel that my recommendation is sufficiently close to the original motion, that we could discuss it at the same time.
I think, as noble as it is a waste of time and money to ask our attorney to address this issue, particularly since it's clear that our attorney and his opinions are not always recognized by this council.
Okay.
And so it's a waste of time. I'd say unless you want to rewrite it yourself, then go. I would recommend that you rewrite it and come back again. If we want to keep beating this dead horse into the ground.
Yeah, we've
Mr.
I
Mayor,
think we've had enough discussion of
yeah,
the issue
Mr. Mayor,
today.
I would recommend that we just vote and move on.
All right, well, if everyone is prepared to vote, those in favor of
What
the
are we voting on?
the original motion by Mr. Corbett.
That's written down there.
Without your reworking some of it to make it clearer.
Just the motion.
I think at first we should just vote on the motion as Mr. Corbett presented it. And if that fails, then I would entertain a motion to revise the statement, hoping to provide clarity, and I honestly think there's a statement out there that everyone could agree to if we can just find the right wording. But I think let's go ahead and vote on Mr. Corbett's motion first.
Would Mr. Corbett be willing to withdraw his motion and substitute this?
Are you making it clear that you're going to come up with a revised motion, revised policy statement for the next time?
I will.
Okay, in that case, I'll withdraw my motion.
All right.
Thank you.
Then would somebody make a motion to have me do that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I didn't hear you, turn your
okay.
head.
There is a new motion on the floor that I will revise this statement, seeking to provide a statement that everybody can agree to.
No.
Is there other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
How about a short break, Mr. Mayor?
That would be fine. At 10:30, according to that clock, 10:32, why don't we take 5-minute break?